For my edition of Arts Night, I've come to the annual Samuel Beckett Happy Days Festival in Enniskillen. This Northern Irish town is where Beckett, probably the greatest playwright of the 20th century, spent his school years. During his lifetime, Samuel Beckett turned the very concept of theatre on its head, confounding and dazzling critics and audiences alike. I know that Beckett's name comes with baggage, but for every accusation of being bleak, opaque, and inaccessible, he is also warm, funny, and humane. That's my Beckett. A playwright with the deepest sense of humanity and a wicked sense of humour. A man who is willing to cast his characters into purgatory, but with toilet jokes to break the monotony. A Beckett play is an experience that pulls you in. It connects you with emotions deep inside, and once he has touched those innermost feelings, he has you. You are under his spell. That's the Beckett I want to share with you. Beckett's plays are constantly being performed, with Waiting for Godot causing controversy for over 6 decades. If I was to say to you, what do you think Godot is about? What would you say?
It's about waiting.
Audiences embrace his immersive theatrical experiences that continue to defy explanation.
What? Who? No, she!
And rail with him against the inevitable descent into old age. Plans for a less engrossing sexual life? Welcome to my Arts Night.
Morning. Good morning.
Samuel Beckett died in Paris in 1989, but his star continues to rise. He's never been more popular or more influential. Beckett's work was written in the aftermath of 2 bloody world wars, but continues to speak to audiences today. What is it that keeps bringing us back to Beckett?
I adore his writing, all of it, not just his plays.
And he's writing from the gut, from his bloodstream, from his heartbeat.
He is an arch innovator, but somebody with whom anybody, in my view, can relate.
Beckett's groundbreaking plays have stayed within our collective consciousness, challenging our expectations of the stage.
Louder. Mister, leave it in peace! Can't you see he wants to rest?
There's a lot of references to vaudeville and sort of comedy and slapstick, as we know, particularly in Godot.
I met Beckett in 1971, and we started talking about silent movie actors, and he said how much he admired them. And if you look at Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, it's all artificial. You know, it's not psychological, it's not naturalistic.
As we know, he didn't want them investigated psychologically, as you would most texts. He wanted them to be scores, like musical scores.
Born in Dublin in 1906, Beckett made Paris his adopted hometown, often writing in French, distilling the language down to its essence.
He was very interested in directing, and directing became a very important part of realizing his plays. Some people might have called him a control freak.
Those Beckett directions, they're very particular and very prescriptive, and they're just pointers for you to muse over every now and then. You should never feel like, well, you can't do a certain thing with Beckett. I think as an actor, it has to be you, it has to be human.
The success of Waiting for Godot thrust Beckett into the public eye.
People knew that he was mysterious, that he was quiet, and that he was not a publicity seeker at all. He ran away from it. His great quality was that once you spoke to him for 5 minutes, it stayed with you and you pretended that you had known him all your life.
I saw a gentleness I'm not sure everyone else saw, and a kindness. When I turned 15, 16, I started writing poetry, and I would send him stuff. I would send him my garbled attempts at prose and poetry. And if he liked it, he would answer, and if he didn't, he wouldn't.
You know, Beckett is supposed to be some misanthropist and depressive. And we rather romanticise this reclusive character, you know. I think he loved people. You can tell he loved people because he loves his characters.
He never tried to lecture us or tell us what it is or what it was about. And he left it as a question. And that's what gives the space and the mystery to his works.
We mustn't have him on this pedestal because it's not a healthy, creative, imaginative place to put any artist, you know. They've got to be down in the dirt with the rest of us.
A country road, a tree, evening. The scene is set. Beckett's breakthrough masterpiece, Waiting for Godot, is arguably the most important play in the 20th century. When Godot premiered in Paris in 1953, it challenged all aspects of theatre, pushing the limits of plot and character, defying the rules of time and space. But with Beckett, there are no easy answers. And perhaps the best way to make sense of this enigmatic piece of theatre is to examine its history.
Waiting for Godot was a play, as a young actor, I definitely wanted to be in one day. It seems to explore unknowingness. It seems to explore regions of irrationality.
Are you sure it was here? What? That we were to wait? He said by the tree. You see any others?
Probably as an actor, you don't need to worry too much about meaning, and you probably shouldn't. It's what the play suggests to the audience that's interesting.
What are you insinuating, that we've come to the wrong place? He should be here. Now, he didn't say for sure he'd come.
And if he doesn't come?
Well, we'll come back tomorrow.
And then the day after tomorrow?
Possibly.
And so on.
The point is...
Till he comes.
You're merciless.
I have always loved Waiting for Godot, but even though I played Vladimir twice, there are still questions I'd like answered. It's a play where nothing much seems to happen. Two tramps, friends of old, wait by a tree for the ever-elusive Godot, with only the brief distraction of a master and his slave to help them pass the time. The play is so deceptively simple. We've been returning to it for over 60 years. I'm meeting up with Professor James Knowlson, Samuel Beckett's close friend for over 20 years, and his official biographer, to discover how Beckett managed to put his unique vision on stage.
Richard!
Jim!
Welcome.
Hello!
So glad to meet you. And shall we go through to the archive?
Oh, yes, I can't wait.
Right.
Thank you.
Up to you. This is a photograph of the original production.
Yeah.
They had so little money to play with.
Yeah, and this is a tree they made.
But it's made of coat hangers. I mean, that was all it was.
Yeah.
With paper wrapped around each bit.
Yeah.
And then you see the characteristic bowler hats of the two tramps.
Did Beckett have much to do with the first production?
He did, Richard, yes. He was very involved. Although he had very little practical knowledge of the theatre, he went to rehearsals virtually all the time. Here is Roger Blanc, who was really very innovative as a director. He let Blanc get on with it because he felt that Blanc had this instinctive understanding of his work. Blanc instinctively recognized that Beckett was subversive. In Godot, nothing is resolved. There is no denouement. There is no exposition. It's all the situation. Can I just do something for me with Richard Wilson?
Yes. Say something.
I'm trying.
Say anything at all.
What do we do now?
Wait for Godot.
Oh. You see why I wanted to do that.
That was a bit naughty to throw that at me.
I can now die happy, can't I?
Beckett's revolutionary new play was garnering interest outside France. He bowed to demand and translated Godot into English. The play's UK premiere took place here at the Arts Theatre on August 3rd, 1955. A theatre dedicated to bringing audiences new and experimental plays not found in the West End. No other theatre was willing or able to stage the production, partly due to the country's censor, who balked at Beckett's toilet humour and D-Day's prostate predicament. As a members-only club, the Arts Theatre bypassed those laws, allowing its artistic director and then 24-year-old Peter Hall bring Godot in all its controversial glory to the British theatre. The play polarized audiences. While some were energized, others were confused, a few downright bored. Many even walked out. But it would be the revered theatre critic Kenneth Tynan who would come to the rescue of Beckett's masterpiece with his review in The Observer on August the 7th, 1955. Waiting for Godot, frankly, jettisons everything by which we recognize theatre. It arrives at the custom house, as it were, with no luggage, no passport, and nothing to declare. Yet it gets through, as might a pilgrim from Mars. The stage had been set for a play that has lasted over 60 years, so far with no sign of slowing down. I'm meeting up with my old friend Sir Ian McKellen. Ian has turned in 450 performances as Estragon opposite Sir Patrick Stewart's Vladimir.
Say, I am happy.
I am happy.
So am I.
So am I.
We are happy.
We are happy. What do we do now that we're happy?
Have you ever wanted to play Vladimir?
No, because that's the tricky part, isn't it? You rarely see a good Vladimir, Richard, and I missed yours. But I don't think you ever see a bad Gogo. Gogo's the easy part. He's the low comedian, I think, of the two.
I remember when I first did it, I was much younger, and playing it was so enjoyable. And when I saw your production, it was very clear that you were having a great time.
We were. By the time you saw it, we'd been educated by the audience. Very early on, they started to laugh, and sometimes raucously. I mean, when we arrived at the King's Theatre, Edinburgh, to packed houses just for 8 performances, it was as if the Crankies had come into town. I mean,
You should have been a poet.
Oh, I was, isn't that obvious?
one of the problems of doing Beckett is that he directed Waiting for Godot himself, and therefore we think there is a way to do the play that he laid down. And I'd like to see Godot with a most fantastic, naturalistic set. I think that would be fun. It doesn't have to be done as it originally was in a cellar where it had no amenities and therefore there was no set. I mean, isn't that the real reason there was no set? They couldn't afford one.
So if I was to say to you, what do you think Godot is about? What would you say?
It's about waiting. And once Beckett pointed out that the human condition is as much about waiting as it is about achievement. You're right, Sam.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say it was any more than that, but it's a very, very big discovery that Beckett made on our behalf.
What's amazing, I suppose, is the fact that that Beckett's work has lasted for so long and is still hugely popular.
I think the reason it is so popular, so instantly understood, is in the title. We're all waiting for Godot. Godot may be Christmas, or your birthday, or a job, or the love of your life, or at our age, death. But we're all waiting. There are other things happening in life too. But no one realised that, put it into words until Beckett. I think that's his great gift to us all.
Samuel Beckett consistently resisted alterations to his plays. This includes a blanket ban on all woman versions of Godot, Beckett declaring women don't have prostates. But he's also written some of the most original and challenging pieces of theatre specifically for the female voice. Irish actor Lisa Dwan has immersed herself in the one-woman plays of Beckett, allowing the writer to get firmly under her skin.
I'm currently in the middle of an international tour of 3 of Samuel Beckett's late one-woman plays, Not I, Rockabye and Footfalls, the most demanding roles for a woman in Beckett's or anyone's repertoire. All 3 plays are closely associated with the actress Billie Whitelaw, who died last December. When she first read Not I in 1972, she said, "Well, that's it, Sam. You've finally written the unlearnable and the unplayable." Though she went on to learn it and play it, making it her own. For all the truth and bravery throughout his writing, I believe Beckett kept his innermost truths and demons for his late works, particularly in his female characters. Here we find him tackling his most primary and domestic wounds. Among them, his mother, May Beckett, with whom at times he had a somewhat fraught relationship. May was disappointed with her son's decision to turn down a perfectly respectable job as a lecturer in Trinity to follow James Joyce to Paris. It is May who is on stage pacing in Footfalls in a state of trauma, in conversation with Mother, who is an ailing voice off stage. Would you like me to change your position? Again?
Yes. But it is too soon.
But if the inspirational source starts with his relationship with his mother or his homeland or death, by beginning with the kernel of his truth, he activates our own. Beckett's work then moves far beyond autobiography, peeling away at the human situation, paring language down to its very poetic essence, and its effect is terribly potent. Beckett takes the art of reduction to the extreme in Not I. All the audience sees is a disembodied pair of lips hovering 8 foot above the stage, speaking a frantic, fragmented monologue at the speed of thought.
Before his time in a godfather. What? Girl, yes, tiny little girl.
In an entirely blackened out auditorium, these disembodied lips often appear to float or oscillate in the audience's mind.
Breeches, she similarly.
I met Billie Whitelaw after I first performed Not I over 10 years ago. A year later, I got a call out of the blue. It was Billie. "I want to give you his notes. I have to give you his notes." In her kitchen later that afternoon, she simply told me to sit down and begin. And as I started speaking, she sat directly opposite me and began waving her hand, conducting me. Ta-ta-ta-ta, ta-ta-ta-ta. Just as Beckett had done with her, at her kitchen table, over 40 years ago. Billie was passing the flame to me, but it came with a warning. Not I took such a toll on Billie that by 1977 she had declared, "I will not play that role again. I cannot. If I do, then I shall go mad." And she told me I lost a piece of me in there, and it never got any easier.
Coffee in a proper cup of coffee pot. Hot coffee in a proper cup of coffee pot. The tongue, the teeth, and the lips. The tongue, the teeth, and the lips.
In order to keep my lips in this pinprick of light that's shining directly into my mouth. It's necessary for my head to be tied into this head harness, which only takes a third of my head, and my stage manager then straps these around my head, and my arms are put into these brackets. And it's not only a physical stripping. Don't act, no colour, Beckett told Billy. He wanted a performance at the speed of thought, to play on the nerves of the audience and not the intellect. In Not I, Beckett actually puts the mind on stage, the disembodied mind. But hugely disciplined as it has to be and physically torturous, playing Not I is the most expansive and liberating thing I have ever experienced. To have your body removed as a woman is one of the greatest gifts I have ever known. With the sensory deprivation I experience in Not I don't even feel like a human being half the time up there, and that is just so liberating.
Out! Into this world, tiny little thing before its time, and a God for what? Girl? Yes, tiny little girl. Into this, before her time, godforsaken, whole, cold, no matter, parents unknown, unheard of, he having vanished, thin air, no sooner buttoned up his breeches. She, similarly, 8 months later, almost to the tick. So no love, spared that, no love such as normally vented on the speechless infant in the home, no. Nor indeed, for that matter, any of any kind, no love of any kind at any subsequent stage. So typical affair.
Of course it costs me. No play has ever wanted so much of me. But I get to peel away the trappings and entrapment of a woman, of what society does to us as women, and go beyond the limitations we set ourselves, the little palatable realities shaped by our fears. Beckett's women are much more than characters. They're more elemental than that. More like slices of life. And it's this huge, boundaryless quality that makes Beckett one of the greatest writers for women of all time. I can hear the female voices in Not I, Rockabye and Footfalls, each individual and distinct. Beckett looked for his inspiration in the cracks of society, dusting off the gems from our darkened corners. But the genius of these works is that they go beyond character and beyond location and reach towards a reckoning with the human condition that's visceral and immediate. That's what excites me the most about performing these works.
It's all the time the buzzing, dull whir like folds in the skull, and the beam poking around, painless so far, so far. All that keep on not knowing what she was. What? Who? No, she!
Beckett's work can be difficult and obscure, but there is one heartbreaking play he wrote that I think can speak to, well, everybody. It enchants audiences because it deals with the messy business of growing old and the regrets we pick up on the way. Written in 1958, Krapps' last tape is about an aging writer with an unhealthy addiction to bananas, reliving his youth via a reel-to-reel tape recorder.
Great granite rocks, the foam flying up in the light of the lighthouse, and the wind gauge spinning like a propeller. Clear.
This is Patrick McGee, who Beckett adored as an actor.
Is in reality my most...
Just been listening to that stupid bastard I took myself for 30 years ago. Hard to believe I was ever as bad as that.
Beckett wrote the play after hearing McGee in a BBC radio production of his novel, Molloy.
The plain and the other amenities of my region, for I knew them well, the amenities of my region, and I considered the following.
Beckett was so moved by the cracked tone of Patrick McGee's voice that he began to write a new play, hearing the actor's distinctive dialect in his head. He described the character as a wearish old man with a wheezy, ruined old voice and some characteristic accent. His working title was McGee's Monologue, and the Northern Irish actor would go on to give one of the most acclaimed performances of his career.
I noticed a scratch on her thigh and asked her how she came by it. Picking gooseberries, she said. I said again I thought it was hopeless and no good going on, and she agreed, without opening her eyes.
Krapps' last tape feels so personal because it is Beckett's most autobiographical play, filled with imagery drawn from his own life. And it's a play that has naturally attracted theatre's great veteran performers.
Box 3!
A truly radical version came to London this summer by the maverick actor and director Robert Wilson.
Cut him out! Cut him out! The shadows of the evening creep across the sky.
It's a story about love. I think that's what touches us, that's what's mysterious about it. It's a love story. It's a man who's in love with the machine, the way he touches his machine and the way he looks at it. So it's very modern, very contemporary.
Just been listening to an oh dear Passages at Random. I did not check in the book, but it must have been at least 10 or 12 years ago. And last year, at the age of 78, I took on the challenging role of Krapps myself. Hard to believe I was ever that young whelp. The voice, Jesus, and the aspirations. And the resolutions. It was very unusual. I'd never done a one-person play before. It's very... it's a bit lonely. Plans for a less engrossing sexual life. A lot of people came to see Krapps' last tape who had never seen Beckett. They had seen Victor Meldrew, and that's who they were coming to see in a way. I suppose it's better to do Krapps when you're getting to my age. And it's quite clear as the play goes on that Krapps is on his way out. Krapps is dying, in fact. I believe some members of the audience found it quite moving that they were watching an old man. Of course, one never really thinks of oneself as an old man. And the final words, listened to by a man nearing the end, are some of the most moving in all literature. Perhaps my best years are gone, when there was a chance of happiness. But I wouldn't want them back, not with the fire in me now. No, I wouldn't want them back. That's all from me. I want to leave you with a little something I prepared earlier. Good night. Well, what we could do now is just have a few moments of sitting here waiting.
Absolutely.